Hi everyone, Nicole Wood, Wildlife Biographer, back here at Sleeping Bear Dunes National Lakeshore. Just a couple quick intro things. So in case you don't get to catch all of this broadcast, you can watch it later on Periscope, and I'll also be uploading it on YouTube and making a podcast on SoundCloud. Well, also, if you've got any questions that you don't get answered today during the broadcast, you can always tweet me or tweet Brian at our respective Twitter handles. Mine's Wildlife Biogal, and then Brian's is at Michigan Birder. So with me today, I've got birding amateur guru. I'm going to go ahead and just throw that out there.
Amateur part, yeah.
Brian Allen. So tell us, like, how did you get into birding? Because you're not, like, we've been talking to a bunch of scientists today, but you're actually not a scientist in a traditional way. You're an amateur birder that's kind of like fallen into this in a different way. So kind of tell us your background when it comes to birding. And
well, maybe birder first, then getting into science too.
Okay.
And I had to went to Michigan State. I've got a couple degrees in biology and zoology, but then I went into the Peace Corps after I was dissuaded from going into mammalogy due to the lack of jobs, and decided to go into the healthcare field. So now I'm an optometrist, and I'm an amateur. I'm a birder, and I do publish some articles in birding and ornithology journals, and do a lot of survey work for birding through eBird website for Cornell. I'm a regional reviewer for eBird. Also, I'm a survey writer for Michigan Birds and Natural History Journal, where we compile all the records of bird sightings from Michigan for the season.
so you're really a scientist who just jumped into something else and then came back into science.
I guess,
Okay.
back and forth, back and
All right.
forth. Yeah.
So talk to us about, birding records and things like that. What's the process with that for people who don't know about birding records and why it's important?
Well, I was thinking about the BioBlitz when you were talking about that before, and why am I here on the BioBlitz, and because we're contributing birding records to the BioBlitz, and why are birding records important? And I think the questions are, is the world changing? And when I think about just specifically birds, I think about what was it like back in 1700, or what was it like in the year 1000, and we just don't know. We've got a little bit of a handle of what it was like in 1940, and we're getting every year more and more data and more information. And so now in 2016 we have a ton of data going in on what birds are present, how many birds are migrating, where are they migrating. We can radio tag them, all types of things. People are now in the tropics, they have technology down there. People have learned how to identify birds and track them in every country. And so now we have so much more information. And that we still even need more, because there are going to be people in the year 2040, and they may have questions that we can't foresee, like how many birds were there before the polar caps melted, or whatever. How many birds were here before the great earthquake in Seattle of 2019?
Right.
And so we want to collect as much data as we can. And already there is a lot of data going in, like I said, on eBird and there's iNaturalist, there's a lot of other websites. And this BioBlitz is collecting information on what birds are present in Sleeping Bear Dunes National Lakeshore today, along with all the invertebrates, insects, grasses, plants. And I volunteered because I don't want that data to be left out. I think even though there are a lot of other sources for this information coming in, BioBlitz is another way to look at this data, and another way to look at it in the future.
So what trends have you kind of been seeing since the time that you started, doing birding records? Have you seen any significant trends in maybe population shifts of birds?
Oh, tremendous changes, huge changes, and that's why I'm driven to do things like this, because I think the average person does not see the change. And I've used an analogy before that going birding in the spring, when you go out to the forest here and you see all the birds of the tropics, we call them neotropical migrants, coming back. These birds are all beautiful colors, orange, green, emerald, pink, red, blue, and to me it's almost like snorkeling on a coral reef. You see all these birds coming back, the forest is in flower like a coral reef, and I go out there and I feel sorry for other people because they're not experiencing that, and I and a few other people get to enjoy that, and it's like the enjoyment of scuba diving on a reef. But one thing that I've seen, and I've been intensely into birding since the 1970s, that there's a dramatic decline. And we know from some data records that that's validated by radar records on the Gulf Coast, by breeding bird surveys that have been done since the 1960s. So now 50 to 60% of the population of these birds that come up into Michigan from the tropics are gone.
Okay.
It's reduced, and to me that's a huge number, and so we want to see what the trend is. Now, it's not all bad. Some species are increasing. For example, indigo bunting's a tropical bird. It's bright blue, it's pretty, a lot of people like them. They're increasing in numbers, and so the question is, why is that increasing in numbers? And some of the researchers at Duke University have found that indigo buntings winter in agricultural habitats in Central America and South America. So they're benefiting from the clearing of forests down there, and their numbers are actually increasing. So bird species by species, different things are happening. The more information we have, the more we can do to assist in conservation, and this is another data source for that.
So for the amateur birders out there, the people who are just getting into it, like what would you recommend, for someone who wants to get into birding? How do you do that?
Well, one thing that's changed quite a bit since I started to get into it, and some of us older birders have, is we used to romp around. I couldn't afford binoculars when I was a kid, so I had to run through the woods and the swamps, and I'd hear a bird, I'd try to figure out what it was, and I'd get really close to it, and if I could see it, and then I'd go to the library. I'd have to check out the one book on birds at the library and thumb through it. Well, now it's overwhelming, the information that's out there on apps. There's all types of apps for birding, bird identification. There's all places to put the information too, like we had mentioned in BioBlitzes or eBird or iNaturalist. So now, and another thing that's changed is a lot of people have these zoom cameras, digital cameras, and they can go out, they don't even use binoculars. A lot of young people don't use binoculars. They just go out and take pictures. And if they don't know what it is, a lot of times they can get on social media sites and they throw up all their pictures out there for people to say, hey, look at this, this is pretty cool. I think it's a Nelson sparrow, a migrant from the Dakotas that's usually not seen in Michigan. And someone will say, oh, that's ridiculous, it couldn't be that. And another one, an expert will come and say, yeah, it is, because you can talk about that now.
Yeah, I'm trying to do that with a hummingbird that I saw that I'm pretty sure it wasn't a ruby-throated, but I was like, that can't be. That's one of the only hummingbirds that we have up here. But I was talking to someone and trying to describe what it was I saw, and it might actually be, it was the white-eared hummingbird, I believe. And I was like, there's no way that can be up here. But talking to someone, they said it is possible. It's highly unlikely.
There's a record in Michigan of one.
And so I'm trying to get a photo of it so I can put it up on social media so those scientists out there can be able to identify it for sure. The darn thing won't come back in time for a photo, but I've been there trying to get it. So like you said, I mean, it's great to be able to do that, because you're not just like, well, I know I saw that. You actually have that record now saying that you saw it, and you can have that verification process with it. So.
And it used to be that people would say, there's no way, they just discount the record or whatever. But you can say, wait a minute, look here, this is what it really is, and people can then see it. For example, we had a hummingbird down in Manistee 2 years ago, and some people called me about it. I thought it was a ruby-throated, but it was late, so I was excited because a lot of late records of hummingbirds are very rare and unusual. And I went to this house, and they were mainly concerned about the welfare of the bird. Is this bird going to freeze to death or what? And I went to see it, and the bird flew in, and I actually got weak in my knees I almost fell down because it was a hummingbird that I know that had never been seen in Michigan, never been seen east of the Mississippi River.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a Costas hummingbird from Baja, Mexico.
Okay.
And there had been a hurricane that hit Mexico, and we had two unusual hummingbirds that year. So I always tell people, leave your hummingbird feeders up in the fall, because this time of year especially, a lot of unusual things show up. And now, like you said, through social media, people can post that, and you can have an expert. I was able to go and identify it, and then we had Alan Chartier, who was a hummingbird expert, came up and caught the bird and banded it, so we know if it will survive. We can find it and it might be caught again in Mexico or wherever it turns up. And then we get a lot more information too on these birds that tend to go adrift in storms, and their survival.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that's a great thing. Like, you were able to not just be able to identify it, but be able to go to that next step where you could actually band it and be able to hopefully get a life history on it.
Yeah.
With that, so.
And I had doubted. This bird was up here through weather. The lows, it had snowed. We had a foot of snow, and it had got down into the teens at night. I'm thinking, a hummingbird from Mexico? I don't know. And this guy survived, and then it departed. We checked. Usually they roost in evergreens, and we made sure it hadn't deceased and fallen to the ground. And it had departed. And I talked to Alan Chartier. He said, I think it's going to survive, even though it has to, they can fly about 500 miles in a night.
Oh.
And he said,
that'd be cool if I could do that.
Yeah, you could make it to Missouri or southern Indiana or Kentucky or so. And they had a rufous hummingbird, another western bird that was in Michigan in January. It was 10 below zero, and the bird left. And I thought, he said, you'd think that bird would have died, because it couldn't get anywhere where it was warm even or mild.
Right.
And they banded that bird. It showed up in Arizona the next year. It was still doing well.
Wow.
So that's interesting things that we're finding out from that.
Neat. Well, I have one question, kind of like a personal one, on my aspect, that I'm in a competition with my niece for the coolest bird that we can see. We have now until Christmas. Where should I go to be able to find the coolest bird that might win this competition?
That depends entirely on your niece.
Yeah.
So
unfortunately, she's the judge and jury of this competition too, and she's 6 years old. So
you have to get into her mind and find out what is cool. Now, to me, it might be a shorebird from Siberia, like we had in Muskegon this year, where we had hundreds of people come to Muskegon to see this bird.
Wow.
But your niece would probably look at that and think it was a boring brown bird. So it might be a cardinal or something easy like that.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, too, she's got actual birders on her team. She started claiming people that I know who do birding for her team.
Oh,
so
boy.
I'm afraid that they're going to help her out a little too much. So I've got to try to get as much help with finding what might be the coolest bird out there.
You might have to get a big, like an egret, something big and showy, go downstate or big one in the marshes.
Yeah, big bird, yes.
For a 6-year-old.
Yeah. So if you guys have any questions here for Brian about birding in Michigan, doing birding records, go ahead and start sending those questions in. Yeah, because I find that's the really neat thing is when you've got those long-term data sets that you can go and look back, and I think birders have been doing such a good job with that.
Oh, yeah.
You try to look at what was going on 50 years ago, and birding I think is one of those areas where you do have that long-term trend, because there's so many people who are interested in it. Whether or not you're a full-on ornithologist, or if you're just an amateur birder going out on the weekends to go look at birds, there's this huge interest in it because it is such a visual, interesting animal out there, and it's easy for people to be able to go and see. It's not necessarily a fish that's out in the middle of Lake Michigan that you may or may not be able to see. You can actually just walk out into the woods behind your house and find something, like you said, with those hummingbirds.
That was right in a neighborhood in a town, and it was one of the most exciting things that happened that year. So you never know. But I mean, there's also the thing where you go out on the pier in November in a raging storm, brave the elements, and find a harlequin duck, and that's really rewarding too. So it goes both ways with that. But anybody can go out and discover new things in a lot of these sciences. That's what we want to encourage.
Right. So tell us a little bit of what it was that you guys were doing here for the BioBlitz, where you were going out. Did you species did you see? Were you guys able to see
Yeah, we were.
anything around?
Yeah, we did. We worked with the students yesterday, and they were a great group. They were interested. We saw some waterfowl on North Bar Lake. Able to show them things like great blue herons and mergansers and kingfishers, a lot of birds that they weren't too familiar with. And they had good questions about that. And today we went out surveying at Otter Creek, and there weren't as many waterfowl around today, but there were good migrations of some of these neotropical birds like the warblers.
Oh, okay.
And we had about 53 species of birds at Otter Creek today, which was a little bit actually lower than I'd hoped.
Really? Okay.
But a lot of the birds are quiet this time of year. In fall, it's harder to do a survey now.
Oh.
We have to happen upon groups of birds that are migrating through, and they're actually behaving a lot like they do when they get to the tropics. They're in foraging flocks, and they're often silent. They'll do a couple little chip notes to communicate to each other.
Okay.
So if you hear those little chip notes, then you've got to stay and work on the group. And as you work through them, you'll see a magnolia warbler here, a bay-breasted warbler there, maybe a bunch of chickadees will cue you in that there's something else in there.
Okay.
And you have to be patient and try to work them as they come.
Sure. Well, if we don't really have any questions out there, is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to talk about with birding and birding records? Maybe might be of interest to people out there?
I guess I would encourage people, if you do have interest in birds and you like to keep track, it's real easy to start out with your yard. You don't have to go onto a website or learn anything about a software. Just take a piece of paper and keep track of what you're seeing that year. And I've seen a lot of people build their interest through that. There are a lot of local clubs that go out into birding, and a lot of great people out there are willing to help people that are interested in beginners. A lot of the local Audubon clubs.
Okay.
And you can get on eBird. You can look at the pictures and what people have done. eBird has good instructions to guide you through. Websites like iNaturalist are very easy to use too, and to record information. And there are a lot of other people out there like me that like to help too.
Correct.
And we'd love to do that.
Yeah, I know for me it's always fun when I can bring someone along and be able to help teach them and watch them, like just the excitement that they get with actually seeing and being able to identify stuff. Like my niece just this summer, I got her bird book with the recommendation of someone from her, unofficial birding competition team, and to be able to see her go out and identify a bird on her own and correctly identify it, it was amazing. It was a ring-bill gull, and it's like I've got the picture of her with the binoculars identifying the bird. It was just so exciting to be able to see that all right, I did that, and she was so excited with it, and that sense of pride that she had gave me a sense of pride to be able to see that she was actually going and excited and doing that. And it's a cool feeling to be able to help people to have that sense of accomplishment and knowing and be able to appreciate the beauty that we have out here in Michigan. So,
and I think it goes two ways, because one thing I'd like to see now is that the young people that are really familiar with technology are helping older people like me to gather information. We had a young man with the National Geographic group today who hasn't been into birds, but he took a picture of a bird, and we were just walking down the trail in the woods. He said, I just took a picture of this, what's that? And I said, wow, that's a Tennessee warbler. I missed that today. And he had a good enough image of that, we could identify that and add that to our list.
Nice.
And he was interested that he was able to record that easily.
Right.
And when I was younger, a lot of birders at the time would just drive around the car or walk on the path, and some of us younger people wanted to do something new, so we put on our hip waders and go out in the swamps. And a bunch of my friends called it guerrilla birding, after the guerrilla fighters. And we'd really go after stuff in places where people didn't go before. And we started to turn up a lot of new things. And it really changed birding from the young end. And I can see birding and some of these sciences getting changed from the young end now, with a lot of these people are recording just using their cameras and getting a lot of data without having to go to the fancy binoculars or scopes initially.
Great. Well, with that, I'm going to let Brian get out of here. If you have any questions afterwards, if you weren't able to catch this, you can watch this on YouTube or catch the podcast on SoundCloud. Like I said, I'll probably get those up tomorrow. If you have any questions, feel free to tweet me at Wildlife BioGal or tweet Brian at Michigan Birder. And other than that, go out, have fun, go in your backyard and see what birds you can find. You never know, you might find, the next random hummingbird that's flying through that isn't supposed to be in Michigan and might have a cool record on your hands.
Find the Calliope hummingbird for us. That's overdue for Michigan. We're waiting for it still this September.
So there's your challenge. Go find that bird. So, and let us know. Tweet it out. Put the picture out of it if you happen to actually ever find it. So with that, have a great day. Get out, enjoy the beautiful Michigan weather that you see back behind us here. So have a good one.